Noah was commanded to build the ark, enter it, and remain faithful inside it. Scripture describes its dimensions, rooms, covering, door, and window, but it never describes a sail, rudder, wheel, anchor, or steering system. That does not prove the ark physically had no means of steering, but the biblical account makes no mention of Noah navigating it. The emphasis is not on Noah controlling the journey. The emphasis is on God preserving him through it. Noah had responsibility, but he did not have control. That distinction guides believers today. Faithfulness is doing what God has placed in your hands. Trust is releasing what He has not.
There are seasons in life when the hardest part is not the storm itself. The hardest part is realizing that you cannot steer through it. You can pray. You can obey. You can prepare. You can act wisely. But there are moments when the outcome is beyond your reach. That is where the story of Noah speaks with unusual clarity. Genesis gives detailed instructions for the ark. God tells Noah what kind of wood to use. He gives measurements. He describes rooms, a roof, a door, and levels. He tells Noah to bring food. He tells him to bring his family and the animals. But Scripture never mentions a rudder. It never mentions a sail. It never mentions a wheel. It never describes Noah navigating the flood. We should be careful not to claim more than the text says. The Bible does not directly say, the ark had no rudder, but the account gives Noah no role in steering it. The emphasis is not Noah's ability to navigate. The emphasis is God's ability to preserve. Noah had responsibility, but he did not have control. That distinction matters, because many of us confuse faithfulness with control. We think that if we obey God, pray correctly, work hard enough, and make wise decisions, then we should be able to determine how the story ends. But obedience does not place the rudder in our hands. Obedience places us where God told us to be. Genesis 7:16 says that after Noah, his family, and the animals entered the ark, then the Lord shut him in. Noah did not shut the door behind himself. The Lord shut him in. That was protection, but it was also surrender. Once that door closed, Noah could not simply step outside because the journey became uncomfortable. He could not abandon the assignment when the rain continued. He could not change direction when he did not understand where the ark was going. He was secure, but he was not in control. Some of us want the safety of the ark without the surrender of the closed door. We want God to protect us, but we also want to reserve the right to take over when His process becomes too slow, too quiet, or too uncertain. We say we trust God, but we keep reaching for a steering wheel that was never installed. The first lesson of the ark is that obedience does not give us control over the outcome. Noah obeyed God. He built exactly what God told him to build. Genesis 6:22 says, Noah did everything just as God commanded him. The waters still rose. The old world still disappeared beneath the flood. Noah's obedience did not remove him from the storm. It placed him inside God's provision through the storm. That is a very different promise. We sometimes speak as though following God guarantees that life will become predictable. Scripture does not teach that. Following God may lead you into places where you have less control than before, because faith is not proven by how much you can manage. Faith is proven by whether you continue to trust when management is no longer possible. Noah could build the ark. He could gather food. He could care for the animals. He could protect his family. But he could not command the rain. He could not lower the water. He could not decide when the flood would end. He could not choose where the ark would rest. That belonged to God. This is where many believers become exhausted. We are trying to do God's work while neglecting our own. We cannot control another person's heart, but we keep trying. We cannot force reconciliation, but we keep trying. We cannot guarantee a medical outcome, but we carry the burden as though anxiety can control it. We cannot determine how long grief will last. We cannot make people understand us. We cannot control every accusation, every decision, every delay, or every closed door. There are storms we can prepare for, but we cannot steer. Faithfulness means doing what God has actually placed in our hands. Trust means releasing what He has not. The second lesson is that God may give detailed instructions without explaining the entire journey. God told Noah how to build the ark, but He did not provide Noah with a route map. There was no chart of the floodwaters. There was no schedule posted on the wall. There was no clear destination announced before the rain began. God gave Noah enough information to obey, but not enough information to control. This is often how God works. We want the whole plan. God gives the next step. We want to know where the obedience will lead. God tells us what faithfulness requires today. We want a 5-year map. God gives us enough light for the next few feet. Psalm 119 verse 105 says, "Your word is a lamp for my feet, a light on my path." A lamp does not usually light the entire road. It gives enough light to keep walking. Noah's life became a sequence of obedient steps. Build, enter, wait, remain, watch, release the birds, wait again. Come out when God says to come out. The lack of a complete explanation did not mean that God lacked a complete plan. It only meant that Noah was being asked to live by trust. The third lesson is that being carried is not the same as being abandoned. Genesis 7:17 says, "As the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth." The ark was lifted and carried by waters Noah could not control. From inside, that movement may have felt directionless. There was no visible road. There were no landmarks. There was no way to measure progress. The ark could be moving while Noah had no idea where it was going. Some of us are in exactly that kind of season. Life is changing, but we cannot tell whether we are moving forward. The familiar has disappeared. The destination is hidden. The process feels unstable because we cannot see direction. We assume there is none when the absence of visible direction is actually not the absence of divine guidance. Genesis 8 verse 1 says, "But God remembered Noah." That does not mean God had forgotten him and suddenly recalled that an ark was floating somewhere. In Scripture, when God remembers, it often means He turns His covenant attention toward someone and acts. Noah may not have been able to see God working, but God had not lost sight of the ark. God remembered Noah. God sent a wind over the earth. The waters receded. The ark came to rest. The silence was not abandonment. The delay was not neglect. The uncertainty was not evidence that God had surrendered control. The fourth lesson is that the waters that appear to control you are still under God's authority. From Noah's perspective, the waters moved the ark. From the biblical perspective, God governed the waters. They rose when God permitted them to rise. They remained as long as He allowed. They receded when He acted. The flood was powerful, but it was not sovereign. That distinction matters. We often give too much authority to the thing that frightens us. The diagnosis is serious, but it is not sovereign. The court case is consequential, but it is not sovereign. The economy can affect your life, but it is not sovereign. The opinion of others can wound you, but it is not sovereign. The failure was real, but it is not sovereign. The storm may shape the season. It does not replace God. Isaiah 43 verse 2 says, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you." Notice that God does not say we will never pass through waters. He says He will be with us in them. The promise is not always escape from the storm. The promise is the presence and authority of God within it. The fifth lesson is that God determines where the ark rests. Genesis 8-4 says, "The ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat." Noah did not steer there. He did not choose the landing point. He did not guide the ark toward higher ground. God brought the ark to rest. This is one of the hardest forms of trust, believing that God can guide what we cannot steer. We often judge the journey too early. While the ark is still floating, it feels like nothing is being accomplished. There is only motion. There is no visible arrival. There is no explanation. There is no evidence that the movement is useful. Remember that movement without visible direction can still be divine transportation. The same waters that destroyed the world Noah knew carried him toward the beginning of a new one. That does not make destruction good. It means God can preserve his people through devastation and bring them to a place they could not have reached by their own navigation. The storm was not Noah's guide. God was. The sixth lesson is that waiting is part of trusting. Even after the ark came to rest, Noah did not immediately leave. The ark rested in the 7th month, but the land was not yet ready. Noah waited. He watched. He sent out a raven. He sent out a dove. The dove returned. He waited 7 more days and sent it again. Then he waited again. And even when the earth appeared dry, Noah did not leave until God told him to come out. This is important because we are often willing to wait for movement, but not for permission. We think that if the storm has stopped, the assignment must be over. But a pause is not always a release. The ark had stopped moving before Noah's season inside. It was complete. Some doors must remain closed for a little longer, even after the rain ends. Some recoveries need more time. Some decisions need more patience. Some opportunities look ready before God says they are ready. Noah entered when God said enter. He left when God said leave. Trust governed both the journey and the waiting. The 7th lesson is that surrender is not passivity. A message about God being in control can be badly misunderstood. It can be used as an excuse for laziness. It can become spiritual language for avoiding responsibility. Someone may say, God is in control, while refusing to make a difficult decision, seek counsel, apologize, work, prepare, or act wisely. That is not Noah's example. Noah worked. He built a massive vessel. He followed exact instructions. He gathered provisions. He cared for living creatures. He protected his family. He watched the conditions. He released the birds. He remained attentive. Noah surrendered control, but he did not surrender responsibility. That is the balance we need. Do everything God has assigned to you. Stop trying to do what belongs only to God. Build the ark. Prepare the food. Care for what is inside. Repair what needs repair. Pray. Act wisely. Tell the truth. Remain faithful and do not pretend you control the sea. There may be a situation in your life right now where you are desperately trying to steer. You have done all you know to do, but still you cannot force the outcome. Perhaps God is not asking you to steer. Perhaps he is asking you to remain faithful inside the ark. What has God clearly placed in your hands? That is your responsibility. What outcome are you trying to control? That may be the rudder you need to release. What has God entrusted to your care in this season? That is where your attention belongs. Are you interpreting uncertainty as abandonment? Remember Noah. The ark moved without his navigation, but not without God's knowledge. It floated without a visible destination, but not without divine purpose. The waters were deep, but they were never beyond God's authority. And the ark eventually rested exactly where God allowed it to rest. You may not have a wheel in your hands. You may not know how this season will end. You may not be able to shorten the waiting, calm the storm, or choose the landing place. But your lack of control is not evidence of God's lack of control. The ark did not survive because Noah was a gifted navigator. It survived because God designed it. God warned Noah. God instructed him. God shut the door. God remembered him. God restrained the waters. God brought the ark to rest. Then God told Noah when it was time to come out. The same God who called Noah into the ark remained Lord over the entire journey. So be faithful with what is in your hands. Release what was never yours to control. Do not break down the door because the waiting feels long. Do not mistake silence for absence. Do not mistake movement for chaos. Do not mistake the storm for sovereignty. You may not have a rudder, but you are not without a keeper. And when you cannot steer the outcome, you can still trust the God who governs the waters.
If you like this content, then kindly hit like, subscribe, and share.